Dacy. So, welcome to the podcast today. In most of my podcasts, I start out with one of my favorite quotes. It says, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So, you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down, and it's made all of the difference in my life." That's by Steve Jobs. So, Dacy, connect the dots for us. Tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Yes, these dots are all over the map. My name is Dacy. I'm a personal stylist, although I struggle sometimes with that term. I don't feel like it always kind of encapsulates everything that I do. And I've been doing this work for about 9 years. And before that, I was a performing classical musician. And so the funny thing about connecting those dots is that if I had had kind of maybe a different perspective from my parents on what was serious enough to do as a career, I might have gone into fashion a lot sooner. But as it was, one of the messages I got when I was growing up was that to think about clothes or fashion was to be very superficial and silly and not worth any brain space. And so I always felt a little ashamed that that was something I cared about. So I did end up going into music and did that for a while, but it was a career that was really not compatible with my temperament. I'm highly sensitive. I'm an introvert. Just lots of things that don't kind of jive with being like a performer. And so, I was getting pretty burnt out in that career and was exploring ways to make a pivot. And my therapist at the time was just like, what is something you've always loved doing that people ask for your help with? And I was like, well, fashion, but I can never do that. That's just not in the realm of possibility. And with some help, she kind of, with her help, I kind of was able to work through some of those feelings and just give it a try. And it went well. And so I kept doing it and I love
it. So when you got started, and by the way, pivoting, I feel like is such a scary thing, and you're someone who's gone through it. So that in and of itself is so inspiring and so cool. Mm-hmm. When you got started, what did it look like? Does it look different than what you do now? I feel like you have a very specific approach to how you do styling. So talk to us about that. I'm curious.
Yeah, well, when I started, I really just had this idea that I would help people clean out their closets and help them put together outfits, and that it would all just be kind of fun and light and easy. And the more I worked with women, the more I realized that there was all of this really deeper meaning behind everything that goes on in our closets. And so the biggest thing that stood out to me was that literally every woman I worked with, and it's at this point, been hundreds of people, literally every woman had a negative perception of her own body, and in particular, a negative perception of the changes that had happened to her body over time. And so that was actually my introduction into intuitive eating and into anti-diet culture, was just this feeling that I couldn't believe that so many women were feeling this way. And it just made me so just sad that there was all this energy being spent, wishing we could get back into other clothes, or not allowing ourselves permission to buy the clothes that fit, or any of those kind of things. So that was, interestingly for me, that's where my awareness around that came from. And then also kind of interestingly is that over the 9 years that I've been doing this work, I've also kind of lived some of those experiences myself with my body changing a lot. And so at this point now, I've been through it with clients, and I've also been through it personally. And so I have a lot of different perspectives on that.
Well, I imagine that having gone through those similar changes makes you more effective at what you do, because it's so relatable. And you're like, well, this is how I went through it and how I addressed it. And you have some great blog posts about that as well. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit deeper. So then you didn't have problems with food, really. That wasn't your introduction into it.
Yeah. I mean, my story is a little bit different than I think probably many guests you've had. I am just like very lucky and always recognized that privilege that I had, that it wasn't something that I worried about very much. I definitely fell into the wanting to belong to the group of girls who were counting calories and worrying about, grams of fat and that kind of thing. And so it was always there in the periphery, but I wouldn't say that I ever had, kind of debilitating disordered eating or anything like that. But yeah, so that's kind of where I came from with that situation. And again, it was something I felt like I would never need to think about. And then until I did.
Like as you got older and
Mhm.
things change, which is what happens. That's the gift of being alive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, what a beautiful way to put it. But yeah, I mean, I'm 44. My body has shifted multiple times over the course of my life. I have had 2 kids, but definitely in the last couple of years, things have accelerated, and it's been disconcerting, and it's been uncomfortable, and it's been, you know, something to kind of really work through.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd love to dig in a little bit more to the meat of your message and
Mhm.
the meat of what you do. And as we go through that, I'd love for you to share the things that have helped you move through that discomfort and things that have been concerning for you as you've gotten older, and how you've not only helped yourself, but you help the people you work with. So to
Mhm.
start, I'd love to discuss how patriarchy and white supremacy impact our decisions around clothing. This is something that you're very vocal about on your website and on your Instagram.
Mhm.
So for somebody who's never really considered that maybe those are the things influencing their choices around clothing, take us through that. Like, what are the messages? What are the influences?
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's like a very many layered issue for sure. But one of the first things that I always want to do with clients is just unpack the messages they've been given about what they should be wearing. And when we get into those messages, um, if we really deconstructed those, we would find that they all have kind of origins in the patriarchy or in white supremacy. So, for instance, even the need to want to appear as thin as possible by your clothes, like by what you wear should make you look as thin as possible. I mean, that in itself is a white supremacist ideal. That was, hundreds of years ago, knowledge that I've learned from Sabrina Strings, from her book Fearing the Black Body. That was kind of a way that that white people tried to distance themselves from slaves and from Black people in this country, was by body type and body size. And so, again, just like if you can trace those things back, realizing that that's what you might be buying into could be a way to really shift your thinking about whether that's something you want to opt into or not. In terms of the patriarchy, I mean, the kind of ideal feminine form and shape, and how we're all supposed to kind of use clothes to create this optical illusion that we have this ideal body shape, is all traced back to, kind of what men prefer to see, what their preferred silhouette would be. And again, that's traced way back to, kind of scientists in the 17th century. And so I always just really want to question, when people are saying, well, you know, I really need to look smaller. I really have to wear something that's flattering. That's really important to me, to really kind of question and say, well, where does that come from? Why is that something that you believe? And try and offer this other perspective, and so that people have the choice. You can still opt in if that's something that you like the look of, but I want us all to realize that we have that choice, that it's something that's been kind of imposed on us.
Yeah. And I could see how that education piece supports people in asking themselves, like, do I want to continue to opt in and sort of participate? I think it's like an invitation to really check in with your values and
Mm-hmm.
check in with, like, who am I committed to being?
Yeah.
Right. Especially if
Yeah.
you're somebody who is passionate about equality
Mm-hmm.
and systemic injustice and discrimination, and you were like, I want to be a part of the solution here. Really giving somebody that education could say, I didn't realize that part of my activism could be dressing
Mhm.
differently, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that actually has been one of, you kind of asked earlier about what things have helped me in kind of working through this discomfort. And that's one of the things that I've really gone back to again and again, is that I truly believe that, all bodies are good bodies, and that there shouldn't be a hierarchy of bodies. And if I believe that, then I can't be disparaging of my own body, and so just leaning back on those values has been really helpful for me. And I agree with you. And I think, the more of us who are able to opt out because of privilege that we might have, because maybe we have thin privilege or pretty privilege, or, other types of privilege, then the more we can shift those norms, and shift that culture, which is something I know you talk a lot about. And so being able to do that is like you said, it can be a form of activism for sure.
Which could feel so empowering, coming
Mm-hmm.
from a disempowered place originally with
Mm-hmm.
your clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to this idea of flattering, what
Mm-hmm.
are other common, you had said you alluded to some of it when you were talking about what you do, but what are the most common common messages that women have gotten, so some of the listeners can sort of self-identify and be like, oh,
Sure.
wow, I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, one is just this very overarching method that we all do need to conform to this, European white standard of beauty. And that, includes so many different things. It includes removing body hair. It includes, dyeing gray hair. It includes dieting to try to form your body into something that maybe it's not naturally meant to be. And and also the effort of trying to use your clothes as tools to portray all of that, to get closer to that ideal. So that's one message. And again, I always want to emphasize that it's completely fine and everyone has body autonomy and can choose what they want to do with their body, but it is something just to be aware of, to make sure that you're choosing it because you want that and not because it's just been kind of imposed on you. Another message that a lot of women have been given is that they do have to wear clothes that are flattering, that is a higher priority than what they might feel comfortable in or what they might even like the look of. And so for a lot of my clients, we do a lot of work around identifying their personal style. And it takes a big mindset shift for people to be able to say, but I thought I had to wear a certain kind of clothes because of the shape of my body. I didn't realize I could choose. Because in the past, there's been a ton of media and just like wardrobe advice and all these things saying, well, if this is your body, if these are the proportions of your body and these are the ratios of the different body parts to each other, you should wear this kind of thing, which really takes no account of the person's actual preferences, which I think is just so fascinating. So yeah, those are a couple of messages. Another one that is really pervasive is this idea that that we've been given kind of by like our consumerist society, that we need to always kind of be wearing something new and different, and that we can't ever just wear things that are simple and easy and wear them multiple times a week if we feel like it.
When somebody becomes aware of all of these messages, so you help them sort of unpack. So I have to wear flattering clothing. And by flattering, essentially, we mean what makes you look smaller than you are, is pretty much what I interpret that word of, is like, how can we make you look smaller? Then also wearing clothing appropriate for your body shape. So this makes me think like, are you an apple or are you a pear? Are you tall or are you short?
Mm-hmm.
I've even heard like, I'm tall, I'm 5'9", and I have friends that are shorter and I've heard them say, oh, I can't wear that. Like, I'm not tall like you.
Right.
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 But
Yeah.
I've even said things like that. Like, I'm too tall. I'm not going to wear high heels.
Yeah.
I've
Right.
even said that.
Right. And that's just it's such a good example, right? To break down again, like, why is it's not allowed for you to be tall and to also add height by wearing high heels. And that is because of patriarchal things somewhere in there where you're supposed to be smaller than the man, right? Or shorter than the man. Yeah, it's fascinating to me. Any of those things can be so kind of like broken down and gone back to the origins somewhere in there that are not great.
Yeah. So what are some of the steps that you take people through? So after you've gotten clear about sort of their messages and beliefs, what would be sort of the next step or tip or advice in sort of this process of getting people to the place of being like, this is my personal style and I like this and I want to wear it?
Yeah, yeah. I think so the first stage is really that awareness, right? And the kind of, uncovering and, kind of reconciling whatever messages you might have been given. And then the next step is really gathering inspiration. So it's a very different thing for many people to gather inspiration without censoring themselves based on their body. And so that's one of the big directions that I give people right away when we start working together is I want you to create a Pinterest board, or I want you to gather some images that you love the look of, but I don't want you looking at things and saying, well, I love how that looks, but I could never pull that off. Or I love how that looks, but that would not work on my body. Or I love how that looks, but I don't go anywhere fancy enough to wear that. If you can just take all those other voices out of your head and just gather inspiration that you feel truly drawn to, like on a gut and like on a gut level, like instinctually, things that you just love how they look, and do quite a bit of that before you even start to reflect on it. I think that's the next really big step, is kind of seeing, okay, and what did you end up with after you did that, with removing that censorship kind of from the process.
And what do you typically discover through that process? Like, what did you see? What happens with your clients? Like,
Yeah. I mean, most people, most women who come to me are convinced that they have no style, that they have no idea what they want to be wearing. They feel really confused and overwhelmed. And once they go through that exercise, it's not always completely clear to them right at the outset, but it's always very clear to me that there is an absolute distinct style that they're drawn to. And that every image that they pulled had things in common. And I just always think that's really fascinating, because I have so many people who just feel like this is somehow some sort of like the feminine, like biological makeup that they're missing. And it's not. It's something that's a skill that has to be developed just like anything else. And so when you allow people to kind of experiment and gather that inspiration, truly everyone kind of comes up with something that makes them feel really happy.
so cool. I feel a little bit like that, which is so
Mhm.
hilarious because my first career was in fashion. So it's weird to
That's
be at this
right.
place where I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't really know my style.
Yeah, but I'm sure,
Change.
yeah. Well, and that's the great thing about fashion and style too, is that it is constantly changing and evolving, and just like our bodies, right? And so we can never, I think that's another thing people always try and do. They want to put themselves in one style box that they never get out of. And things are always changing. Our bodies changing, our lifestyles changing, our preferences, our tastes. So it's always evolving, and you can't ever really like lock yourself in.
Mm. I'm curious about, and this is a little bit of like a segue into a slightly different topic, but have you ever had clients, and if you have, what do you do about it, where they are feeling really attached to like old types of clothing, so that clothing represents something for them where they don't want to get rid of it, like maybe it doesn't fit them anymore, or maybe they have nowhere to wear it to and they're struggling to
Mhm.
want to let go of it? And I'm sure in theory it's fine to hang on to it, like if you want to hang on to it, right? Have you had situations like that, and what has that been like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say almost all the time. Yeah, there's something like that. And I think it's just, again, there's this kind of idea that we should be able to just kind of let go of things quickly and just be like, well, clean out your closet, just get rid of all that stuff. And I think for me, it's been really helpful to make sure that people understand that this is like a bit of like a mini grieving process, right? Like this is a new and different stage of your life. And anytime there's change, it's hard. And then especially the way that we're kind of conditioned societally around our bodies and clothes changing means that that is a really can be a really traumatic thing. And I think just acknowledging that and kind of acknowledging the sadness that goes with that, but also acknowledging like I'm not that person anymore. I've changed and grown in many different ways, not just in my body or my clothes. I think all those ideas are kind of helpful to work through, instead of just being like, oh, you can get rid of it, it's no big deal. No, it is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I loved how you said it's a mini grieving process.
Mhm.
I think that given the dominant narratives within society, particularly that, like, when you're 40, you should somehow still look 20,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Or that youth is the most valuable thing, or if you do end up looking like you're aging, that's a bad thing. And then also the narrative around weight loss, right? And if you've gained weight and you can't fit back into these clothes, those clothes could symbolize so much for you. And there could be a part of you that's, I'd love to dig into this with you, but hanging on to it as like motivation, right? Like
Oh,
there could be
yeah.
skinny clothes or whatever.
Yeah.
There is a grieving process to let those go, because you're also letting go of an idea, perhaps, or of how things
Mhm.
used to be. Maybe you're making peace with the fact that they're not ever going to be that way again. And like, it's amazing that so much could be wrapped up in clothing, but like, it makes so much sense to me. And so I
Right.
loved that you use the word mini grieving.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely accurate, all of those things. And there has to be some work around body and lifestyle and acknowledging, and this is where my work really, where I started to connect with intuitive eating so much, was because I really wanted to be able to talk to those clients and say, but what are you willing to give up in order to fit back into these clothes, which, is that really that important to you? Like, let's talk about what fullness your life has now and how much restriction and, overwork in certain areas do you want to add in for that? And if you can say, intellectually, no, I don't want to put that effort in. I don't want to do that type of restriction. Then this is a small exercise in accepting where you are now, and learning to let go of those past clothes and that past self a little bit.
So is there anything else that you want to add here around either buying clothes that are too small,
Mm.
hanging on to clothes that don't fit as motivation? Is there anything else that you kind of want to add in there that you've seen or that's been helpful?
Well, I think it's just this message that, of course, you're doing such a good job of getting out there, and so many people are doing. But one of the messages women have just been given over and over and over is that our bodies should not change, right, over the course of our lives. And that is just absolutely not true for 99% of the population. And it is in fact extremely normal for your body to change. And so this is one of those ideas, again, this message that we just have to figure out, like, where did that come from and why do we believe that? And like you said, like, why should we be at 40 pretending to be 20 or wanting to have the body of our 20-year-old self? And so I really just, you know, again, it's not to say that it's easy at all, but really just to say that, you know, can you move, take a step forward into acceptance, of where you are now? Can you start to let go of the idea that your body shouldn't have changed and allow that it has, and that that's okay, and in fact that's normal? And I feel like if you can start to take baby steps in that direction, then you can, again, if you can accept that bodies should change and that that's normal, then maybe you don't need that motivation anymore. And maybe you can let that go.
Hmm. And so then I'm assuming naturally, right? So through that process, and you had an amazing blog post, by the way, called Bodies Will Always Keep Changing. And I
Mm,
definitely recommend people go and listen to it.
mm,
You, in that blog post, you talked about your personal experience of being a mom of two kids and how your body has changed throughout those experiences. And also you said this, I can't remember if it was before we were recording or not,
mm,
or during the recording, but now being in your 40s and
mm,
going through this own process for yourself. So in addition to what you had shared,
mm.
is there anything else that you would want to offer anybody here as it specifically relates to like their wardrobes and their clothing that could be
Mhm.
helpful in this process of your
Yeah.
bodies are changing? That's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing, is that you have permission to buy new clothes that fit your body. And I know that sounds very simplistic, and I'm sure you run against it with your clients too, is this huge resistance we have to buying clothes that fit our current body. And just to feeling it's that kind of old diet culture mentality of thinking like, well, I'm not going to buy new clothes for this body, because that would be wasting money, because I'm going to get back into that old body and I'm going to get back into those old clothes. And so just really, 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 as a form of self-care, allowing yourself to buy clothes that fit, I think is such a huge, like almost a somatic experience you can give your body, that you can say, you are worthwhile, you are worth buying new clothes, you are worth having clothes that fit, that don't dig into your body, that don't feel uncomfortable. And actually doing that kind of gives, sends a message, I think, to your body that it's okay. It's okay to be where it is.
I love that. That was really potent, by the way. And I loved how you framed that, of just really getting like, by you making the choice to go not only buy clothes that fit, but with the help of you and your services and your expertise, but also buying clothes that represent who you really are and the style and aesthetic that you're actually drawn to.
Mhm.
That is such a recognition of, this body's okay, this body is worthy, I deserve these things in this body, this body doesn't automatically make me unworthy.
Mhm.
I feel like that's such an incredible perspective.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, I want to put the disclaimer out there that, especially if you're moving from certain body sizes into other certain body sizes, like there can be a real scarcity around clothing and feeling as though you are missing out because your size is changing. And so I want to acknowledge that's like definitely a real fear. And there's definitely like still not enough options at all size ranges, but it definitely, there's, if nothing else, there's more out there than there has been in the past, and that is for most people a really real experience that you can give yourself.
So sort of speaking to those two things, or you're alluding to a little bit of like of privilege, so size privilege, but then also class privilege, right? Like how much
Mhm.
disposable income do you have? And often plus size clothing is more expensive, it's more material.
Mhm.
So when you're in a situation, so for anyone who's listening who is plus size or larger, who can't shop at the average store and find clothes in store that fit, or somebody who doesn't have the most disposable income, what are some
Mhm.
strategies or tips, or even just perspective and
Mhm.
compassion that you can maybe offer
Yeah.
somebody in those two categories?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's hard. It's really hard. And just to acknowledge that, I know a lot of people feel as though that in itself is just not acknowledged. And it is. There's absolutely a narrowing of options in the larger that you go up in the size range. I think a couple of things come to mind. One is that um, actually originally in my business, I really set out to be like this minimalist personal stylist until I kind of realized like, oh, well, you can't really be minimalist until you like know what you actually like, what you actually will use and need. And so, but part of me does kind of go back and lean back on some of those minimalist principles, which is that you don't need a lot, so, no one needs to go out and buy thousands of dollars worth of new things. I mean, we really could be talking about a couple of items that just those things can make a real shift in your daily life. There definitely are ways to do that secondhand as well. I'm a big thrift store shopper. And again, sizes are limited there as well. But it's definitely something that, and then I would also say the other thing that I would say is getting really clear on what that style is that you love, so that you can just pick one or two things to kind of add to your wardrobe that kind of kind of illustrate that style that you're going for. And so that can really help just make a shift in your wardrobe.
I think that's really helpful to hear. I feel like it would be easy to sort of make the assumption of like, oh my God, I need an entirely new wardrobe. Like everything has to go, everything needs to be replaced. And really, I hear what you're saying
Mhm.
of like, it's really helpful to get to the place where you're clear on what you like
Mhm.
and what your style is, what clothes you're comfortable in and actually enjoy wearing. And that would support you in being able to buy just a handful of
Right.
really, really incredible pieces that you like and that fit. And that could have such a big impact
Mhm. Yeah,
for sure. So
absolutely.
that's helpful to hear, that it's
Yeah.
not like We're not remodeling the whole house, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think so often we have like a black or white thinking, right? And so this is kind of like a little bit of like the gray area is like, try a couple of new things. And, again, they can be things. I mean, Old Navy is one of my go-tos, for size inclusive, cute options. And, you could get a couple of things and just see how that kind of shifts your perspective.
So, in addition to getting clear on your style and aesthetic, detangling the sort of narratives and rules and messages that you've received that have been influencing how you've been dressing or relating to clothing and your body. Once you've sort of gone through that process and you have then found some pieces that fit, maybe not a gazillion pieces like you were saying, just a few items, what are the benefits of doing that? So what are the outcomes that people could expect to experience if they were to go through this process with you or on their own? Like, what can they
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
forward to?
Oh my gosh. I mean, first of all, I think it cannot be, we can't emphasize enough the impact of letting go of those clothes that are too small. Just being able to go into your closet and not have those items screaming at you that there's something wrong with your body as it is right now is huge. And I often hear that from people that once we've just gotten rid of the stuff that just it really has negative energy. It really is, reminding you of something that maybe wasn't healthy or was a time again in your life that is no longer true for you. So just the impact of letting those things go can be really, really amazing. And then I think just for anyone being able to go to their closet, and whether it's 10 items or 100 items, being able to open the closet door and saying like, I can wear whatever is here. I can wear whatever is here and I like it and I'm going to feel good in it. I mean, there's so few things, and food is another one, but there's so few things that we have to deal with on a daily basis like that can actually make an impact on our mood. And I really think having clothes that fit that you like is one of those things. I think it shifts your whole day.
Totally. I mean, the amount of times that a bad body image day is triggered by opening up your closet and seeing clothes don't fit. I often say
Mhm.
that they don't just take up physical space, they take up mental and emotional space. And I loved that you had said they hold negative energy, right? Or
Oh,
not positive experiences. And it's like every time you open up your closet door, you're sort of just reminding yourself of that. And so having them gone, it's maybe not fully out of sight, out of mind, but largely out of sight,
yeah,
out of mind, right?
yeah,
And then knowing that you can open up the closet and be like, I have these 10 different items. I can mix and match them in a bunch of different ways, potentially. And I know they fit and I know they like them. Just like the
mhm,
ease of getting dressed, when getting dressed can be so challenging and such a
yeah,
difficult experience for people, I could see
yeah.
the positive ripple effect that that would have.
Yeah, that would be huge. And I just since we've kind of talked about adding new pieces and how great that can be, I also just want to kind of um, just acknowledge that shopping in itself and getting those new pieces can be super traumatic and can be a really hard experience and something that a lot of people feel super overwhelmed and confused by. And so I don't want anyone hearing this to be like, well, that's so easy. I'll just go out and buy 10 new things, because getting to those 10 new things often means trying on 100 things to find the ones that actually work for you. So I don't want to, again, make it seem like it's such an easy little exercise to do, but definitely if you can put in some time and effort to get there, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. I don't like shopping. I want to
Mhm,
just like have the clothes that fit. So I'm glad that you
mhm.
added that in there. So when you're working with somebody, what does that process look like between you guys? Like, do
Yeah.
you find the items online for them? Like, what does that look
Mhm.
like?
Sure. Yeah. So we do the first session where we uncover those messages and we talk about their personal style, look at that Pinterest board. In the second session, we do a little closet edit. So we do kind of move some of those things out. And again, they don't always have to completely leave the house. If you're not to that stage of acceptance yet, maybe they can just leave your closet and maybe they can go in a bin somewhere that you don't have to look at them. And then at that point, we start to talk about the process of shopping. And again, this is something that's a challenge for, again, 90% of women, where we've kind of been conditioned to think like, oh, all girls just love going shopping and it's so fun and so easy. And that is, in my experience, just not the case for most people. So the shopping process can be, I think it is really important to acknowledge that it can be, first of all, something that was traumatic growing up. It could be something that has really, kind of uncomfortable memories attached to it. And then I think there's also a lot of the idea about shopping being something that we should be able to just order something, it should arrive, and we should put it on, and it should fit, and we should be happy, and we should be done. And that is, again, not the way it goes for 90% of the experience. So what I do is I kind of go through the process with my clients. We do all online shopping, and that's really the case for everyone these days. I mean, with pandemic and with, remote work and remote like locations, really kind of everyone's doing things online, which is great because that's where the most size inclusivity is as well. And a few things that I always tell people is just to expect that, well, one thing is that we use your measurements, and so that's something else we have to kind of detach from. It's hard to, I try and neutralize that as much as possible and just say, like, these numbers are meaningless. They're just a tool. They don't reflect on your, worthiness, but they're a tool that we're going to use to find clothes that fit your body. So we use measurements, we use the size charts on websites, and then we almost always order a couple of sizes as well, because when you're ordering stuff online, it's extremely frustrating and kind of just a really deflating experience if you order something and you just order one thing and it doesn't fit, and then you just feel like you're just stuck and you have to go restart the whole process. So typically what we do is we order a lot. We order a lot at once. We order a lot of different items, and we order different sizes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it definitely sounds like it is effort and time and energy
It
up front,
is.
right?
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the outset, there's a lot of freedom, a lot of freed up energy, a lot of freed up time, and probably a lot of happiness and peace,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. I like to think of it as like you're kind of investing your time up front so that mornings can be quicker and easier later on when you're getting dressed.
Yeah. So I want to speak to what you had alluded to this earlier as being one of the messages that we receive, which is that we need to like constantly have new things and that we can't wear the same things twice. I feel like we get this, at least how I perceive that I've gotten it, is from like celebrities on like the runway, where it's like they always need a new dress for like every event that they go to. I think that's where I've gotten it. But can you speak to sort of this narrative, right? And how would you coach somebody who goes into an office? Because I'm sure maybe hopefully at one point we all go back to offices if that's what we want. I'm work from home for life, I think, but
Yeah.
for those of us that want to go back to work or who already are back at work, because that's a thing, and they have fear around wearing the same thing every single week, right? Or wearing the same outfit. Can you, one, talk about like that narrative, right? That we need new things. And then what are some helpful perspectives that you could offer for somebody who is like, well, what if they see me in the same outfit?
Right. Yeah. So I love to break that one down, because then I really love to say, like, okay, so let's think about what is the negative thing that person could be thinking about you, and to really like go really far into that and think like, well, do they think that I don't have enough money to buy more clothes? Do they think that I'm not washing my clothes and that I'm dirty? I mean, truly, like, where does, that kind of shame come from a little bit? And then for a lot of people, it's really just like, well, that's what I always thought I was supposed to do. Like, I have so many clients come to me and say, like, in high school, I kept a calendar where I wrote my outfit every day so that I would never repeat it. And, somehow that I would never get, kind of shamed for that. And so, breaking down why that's an anxiety, I think, is helpful. And then relating it back to this being a relatively recent development in kind of capitalistic consumerist society, and thinking like, in the really before globalization, it was not possible for people to have this many items of clothing. It just really wasn't feasible for anyone except like the ultra wealthy. So, in the 50s, 60s, people had fewer outfits than they do, and they wore them more often. And then with the rise of globalization and overproduction of clothing, and therefore the marketing for that clothing, we were given this message that no, you always want to have something new. You want to have something new and exciting and different, and you don't want to be seen in the same thing. But just really realizing that's kind of like That's the man. And if you can, again, be an activist and go against that and be like, no, I'm okay. I'm okay if people see that I wear, the same pair of pants 2 times in a week. That doesn't mean anything about me or my worthiness or my personality or anything. So yeah, I don't know. That was just a bunch of rambling about how I feel about repeating clothes, but I just think it's really important to be able to let go of some of that indoctrination.
I mean, I love the sort of self-reflection questions of really asking somebody to like, well, what is it that you think they're going to think about you? And I
Right.
think a little bit through that process, I think there might be some validity. Like, sure, some people are maybe going to judge you, right? Sure, some people are going to maybe think you don't have a lot of money or you're not clean, right? Like, some people might have those thoughts, right? And I also think that you can also see how some of them are silly and being like, yeah, I probably wouldn't think that about somebody. And it's also possible that maybe you're too busy, you don't even notice that you're
Mhm.
more worried about it than anyone else is. So I think doing that internal investigation and essentially that thought work and belief work that you offer them
Mhm.
is really potent and helpful in getting them to realize, okay, maybe I'm worrying about this more than I really need to. And I really loved what you had said about like, this is a result of capitalism and like of the man and consumerism and selling you shit and making
Mhm.
you spend money when like you don't
Mhm.
have to, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's not necessary. Yeah. And then it's a really patriarchal thing too, right? Because do men ever get called out or judged for wearing the same thing over and over? No, it would never happen. And so why do we have to do it? Why is that a standard of femininity?
Mm. Is there anything else to say there on that? Like, I like just of like, I think you're right. I feel like most men wear a black suit to like every
Hmm.
award show.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Every award show, or if you want to like put it in context for like us normal people, it's like, when you go to friends' weddings, yeah, your partner or your husband or your boyfriend is going to wear the same suit to every wedding, but yet you need to have a new dress to attend every wedding. And what if we could just wear the same kind of simple thing, and not give two shits about it? I don't know. It would be really interesting to see. I would love to have that kind of happen more often, to have that be normalized.
Yeah, I love that. I actually get a little bit of a sense of pride because I bought one dress, I don't know, however many years ago. I'm like tracking it back to like the boyfriend that I had at the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Who was I dating and how long ago was that? We went to his sister's wedding and I bought this dress and it's more of a loose fitting dress. And every wedding that I've gone to since then, with the exception of like one that was black tie and like I needed a super, super
Mhm.
fancy, and then one that was a Halloween themed wedding where I wore a
Oh, wow.
costume. Right.
Okay.
So with the exception of those two weddings, every wedding since then, I've just worn the same exact
Mhm.
dress. And
That's
and
great.
even though I've gained weight over the last, I think like 7 years or whatever, it still fits because it's on the loose, it's a loose fitting dress. But I've
Mhm.
worn the same dress and I kind of pride myself on it of like, yeah, I'm just not like spending money on a dress that I'm gonna wear once. And
Yeah.
that money is going into my IRA and
Mhm.
is going to, in my opinion, have a better ROI than that one dress, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And I just had a thought that came up when you first asked me about this repeating outfits, and that I had kind of forgotten, but I want to come back to, is like, unfortunately now we're in this new age, because you were saying it's really like, for you growing up, it was the idea of the celebrities never wearing the same thing again. And I just want to call out Tiffany Haddish. If you know her, she's worn the same white dress. She's a comedian, and she's worn the same white dress to like many, many red carpet events, which is super cool. Um, but unfortunately, now we're in like this Instagram era where there are fashion influencers and they are wearing different things on their feed every single day. And I can tell you from knowledge that I have that those things are not things they even keep usually, you know what I mean? But it's perpetrating this idea again that we have to have an endless supply of new and different stuff. And it's really, it's kind of tragic. I hate it.
yeah. And as somebody who was a food blogger and a food influencer to some degree for a while, a lot of that shit you don't have to pay for.
Right. Yeah,
They
exactly.
get
It's
sent it
not a
for free.
realistic, yeah, it's not a realistic lifestyle to aspire to. And yet that's kind of what they're selling. So yeah, I have big problems with that.
Yeah. Like I don't get it anymore because I don't post food, but I would get free shit, food
Mhm.
products in the mail all the time. I mean, I would say yes to it. So I'm not like
Mhm.
not taking some responsibility for it, but like there would be so many products that I would use in like recipes and things that like I didn't pay for and I probably wouldn't pay for. So I have a different perspective now of like, I'm not going to take free products that I'm not going to use. Like I have
Right.
a different value system and boundary around it than when I did when I was like 21 when I got into this. But you know, like there were just things that like I probably wouldn't have bought because I'm like, that's just like a really expensive bag of powder.
Right. Yeah. 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 And there are certain things that it's funny, actually, I had a past client asking me about the sweater. She was like, I see everyone, everyone, quote, everyone on Instagram wearing the sweater. She's like, but I don't actually know anyone in real life who owns it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't either. And like all those influencers were gifted that sweater. And it's just a massive marketing campaign. And it can make you feel, again, like you're left out or you're not cool enough if you're not participating. But it's all made up. It's just fabricated.
Yeah. And consumerism, you know,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, we want to get pissed about plastic straws. It's like, well, let's take a look at fast fashion, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else that you want to add here that we haven't covered, or a philosophy or a tip or advice, anything that you would want to leave the listeners who are struggling with their relationship with clothing and feeling good in their clothes?
I think it really just comes back to that. And I think this was actually one of my posts that you reshared the other day on Instagram, but you deserve clothes that fit. It really is something that, we'd never, for those of us who are mothers, we'd never think twice about our child growing and us buying new clothes that fit. But yet somehow if our bodies change, it's not okay. It's not okay to spend money on ourselves, to buy things that fit our body. And those are things that, like we talked about, can have such an impact on your daily life. And I just want to give everyone out there the permission to do that.
Yeah, invest in yourself that way. And I loved
Yeah.
that you brought it back to like, you don't think anything of it when your children grow and need new clothes. So why are we putting all this pressure on ourselves and shaming ourselves or making it wrong, you know?
Mhm.
Um, you deserve clothes that fit. And when you wear clothes that are too tight and too small, it makes you hyper fixate on your body. So it makes your
Oh,
body image
absolutely.
worse.
Yeah.
And it's taking up time and energy. It's just distracting to wear clothes that don't fit. Right. So
Yeah.
having clothes that fit, that are comfortable, like frees up so much energy, and it absolutely has a positive impact on your body image. And I think that that's something that maybe you've experienced. I've definitely experienced it with clients where we do the work around clothing, we have them get clothing that fits, and they were like, I didn't realize how big of an impact it would actually have.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. That always happens. And it's something that you can't know until you experience it. And so again, I just think it's so important to try and allow yourself that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Dacy, fun little question here. What are you most excited about in life right now?
I am most excited that I went into Target this morning and there are like outdoor spring things being put on the shelves. I am not a winter person. I hate being cold and I live in the Midwest. And just the idea that spring might be on its way is very, very exciting to me.
Where in the Midwest are you?
I'm in St. Louis.
St. Louis. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you to get some of that warm weather.
Yes.
I definitely live in California for the weather, so I understand
Yeah.
liking the
Yeah.
warm weather. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Definitely.
Did you make out like a bandit at Target, or did you spend $1,000? Like I see all these TikTok videos about people who can't go, they go into Target for toothpaste and walk out with,
Right. No, I actually did go in for a prescription and I ended up buying a couple other things, but it was all necessary. So I did all right. I did all right. I did look for the Valentine's candy on clearance, but it was already gone.
oh
So
wow.
yeah, I know. It's the day, by the way, we're recording this the day after Valentine's Day. So
Yeah. Um, where can everybody find you if they're interested in either learning more, connecting, reading your blog, or they want to learn about your services and work with you?
sure. Yeah. My website is mindfulcloset.com and I'm on Instagram at mindfulcloset. I would love it if anyone wanted to come over and say hi over there. It's a fun place to be, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. And you work with people individually. You also have groups, and you also have
Mm-hmm.
an online course. You have a variety of ways that people can work with you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Thank you so much for being here today. This was awesome.
This was a great conversation. Thanks for having me, Kara.
Thank you so much for listening to the Love Your Bod Pod. I hope you got so much value out of this episode with Dacy. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future value-packed episodes of the Love Your Bod Pod.